Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a small poem, What Am I After All? Poem number 25 of the 38 of Autumn Rivulets. We've commented already that autumn over-related to the old, rivulets over-related to the new. We are going to ask by the end of our study here, why is this little poem here in this section? Now, our assumptions are that you've been with us at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you've been with us from the very beginning of inscriptions all the way up to and including a set of comments, introductory comments for Autumn Rivulets, and then finally we just finished with Out of the Folds. Now, our Nortons will tell us that this little poem in Leaves of Grass of 1860 was Leaves of Grass number 22, and in Leaves of Grass 1867 it was number 4 in the Songs Before Parting supplement, with the present title in 1871 as a Passage to India poem. In a number of manuscripts we actually have a second line which was dropped in 1867. It runs like this: I cannot tell why it affects me so much when I hear it from women's voices and from men's voices or from my own voice. Of course, here we'll be speaking about Whitman's name. Now, we've commented already that in 1855, when he published Leaves of Grass, he didn't put his name there at the very beginning, and that's why it's so significant. Those opening set of introductory lines that begin with the word come, as we said, for the deathbed edition, where he actually puts his name there. Playing with names, of course, is a very old idea, and as we will point out, Homer plays around with this a lot. Of course, we have the names of biblical and religious texts as being somehow very important and sacred, and you'll remember that Odysseus will tell that Cyclops Polyphemus that his name is nobody. So let's play the game of names. Now, I'm going to, before I begin this reading, I'd like to just take us for a few seconds to Song of Myself, passage 21 that we already messed with. Do you remember this? Who goes there? Hankering, gross, mystical, nude? How is it I extract strength from the beef I eat? What is a man anyhow? What am I? What are you? All I mark as my own, you shall offset it with your own, else it were time lost listening to me. Later, of course, he'll say that I wear my hat as I please indoors or out. In 55, he said, I cock my hat, right? He edited it away. Now, let's look at this set of lines. What am I, after all? What am I, after all, but a child, pleased with the sound of my own name, repeating it over and over? I stand apart to hear. It never tires me. To you, your name also. Did you think there was nothing but 2 or 3 pronunciations in the sound of your name? Now, there are readers of Leaves of Grass who will say that little poems like this should probably have just been, jettisoned from the deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. I'm not convinced. I think that little poems like this, in fact, Whitman is doing something fairly profound. Now, we've already pointed out that the I am construction, borrowed, of course, from the book of Exodus of the Bible, is one that Whitman loves to play with. Notice the inversion here. What am I? And then the after all. But a child, which immediately takes us back to Song of Myself 6, as well as obviously a child went forth. Pleased, you'll remember the use of this word at the very beginning of Leaves of Grass with the Beginning My Studies poem. Pleased with the sound of my own. Now here you would expect maybe it would be the sound of my own voice, but it's not. Instead it's the sound of my name. And then all of a sudden, because you've been reading all these poems, one right after the other in Leaves of Grass, it does occur to you that names matter, both as a word and as well as a reference in Leaves of Grass. Do you remember that in Song of Myself, passage 6, the child is speaking and the owner's name is on the handkerchief? You'll remember. Or do you remember Song of Myself 48, signed by God's name, those letters at the end of passage 48 of Song of Myself? And all of a sudden it occurs to you that names and naming is a whole lot of what cataloging is. So all of a sudden, his use of the word name is no throwaway word anymore. Notice, he'll say, what am I after all but a child, pleased with the sound of my own name? And then he'll comment, repeating it over and over. And we think of cataloging as that very thing. And then he'll say it, I stand apart to hear. Now, Song of Myself, passage 22, you'll remember, say, I stand indifferent. But at this I stand formulation, 18 different times in Leaves of Grass will be used. I find that fascinating, that this idea of standing, as in to be prepared, I stand, and notice here it's apart, to here, and then notice the dash to make us think of our Emily Dickinson. It never tires me. Now, some will see this as egotism, right? And of course, this passage has to be read with the opening lines of Song of Myself 1, right? But then, to borrow from Song of Myself passage 1, for every atom belonging to me as well belongs to you, notice how the poem ends. To you, your name also. In other words, in a world of billions of names, your name is somehow significant. It matters to you in the same way that Whitman will say his name matters to him. And then finally, this interesting question, did you think, which will take us back to a Song for Occupations, passage 4, did you think there was nothing but 2 or 3 pronunciations in the sound of your name? What's the rhetorical question here? Well, I think the point that he's making is all names are significant, all names are important, and therefore, at 2a, everyone matters. The power of a name is in the recognition that we all matter in some profound way, and our name is a way of kind of reminding us of that, which is, again, why it's so significant that Odysseus will often say, my name is nobody, and as we've commented, that's significant in our study of Homer's Odyssey. By the way, at 2b, I love this direct question directly to the you. I love how he will play that game, and I love all the echoes from earlier parts of Song of Myself and elsewhere in Leaves of Grass. We mentioned at 3a the Odyssey, and especially Odyssey 9, when he will say to Polyphemus, my name is nobody. We've given full lectures on all of the Odyssey at learnstrong.net, and you can run that one to ground. But I find that an interesting study of Homer, as I mentioned in my lectures, the way in which names matter, and the way in which having the name or not having the name, and of course for Odysseus, my name is nobody, is significant because it seems as if he never can quite figure out who he is, and nobody around him can ever figure out who he is. The moments in the poem when he doesn't want to tell people who he is, Polyphemus comes to mind, and then of course later he'll tell Polyphemus who he is, which will explain why Poseidon is going to be mad at him and not let him go home. But then when he gets home and he tries to tell people who he is, nobody will, of course, believe him. It's fascinating. I want to think about the power of the name in Arthur Miller's Crucible as well. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net on this amazing play as well. Do you remember that pivotal moment at the very end of the play? It's so easy. Proctor can save his life. All he has to do is just put his name on some silly confession, and he tears it up, and when he's asked why, by, of course, Goody, he will say it, because it's my name, and it's the only thing I have. And of course, the name here being representative of who he is, his reputation. Now, why would this poem end up, let's ask this 3a question, in autumn rivulets? Well, I think that you can easily access the notion that in some way your name is the river of your life. It's the significant declaration of who you are in some profound way. For many of us, our names, of course, will tie us back to earlier, maybe people within our family and the like, or to some other kind of referencing. Finally, at 3b, of course, this is an easy way to own this poem. What do you think of your name, especially your full name? And do you ever tire of it, the way that maybe Whitman suggests he never tires of his name? I hope that this little poem is a fun one for you to enjoy. Thank you.